Welcome back, Red Spotters, to Red Spotlight Entertainment. I'm your host today, Alexis J. Soto, joined by Mr. Peter Martinez, and we've got a wonderful show for you here. The podcast that brings you all of the latest stories coming out of the world of movies, and of course, the Oscars. The nominations just came out, and we're going to go over what we liked, what we didn't like, right here and now, as well as reviews for two films. One of them an Academy Award nominated movie now, and the other completely ignored, but also critically acclaimed. The films we'll be discussing today is Lin-Manuel Miranda's directorial debut starring Andrew Garfield. It's the adaptation of Jonathan Larson's Tick, Tick, Boom, and then on Netflix. And we also have being brought to us by Neon, it is Pig, which is also a feature debut by, I think, Michael Sarnowski, starring Nicolas Cage, and was considered to be, at least Nicolas Cage's performance, critically one of the best of the year 2021. So you have those reviews coming your way here on Red Spotlight number 374. Before we get into what we saw this week, let me just get this over with real quick. Saba TV, we mention them every now and then. They released today that Nightmare Alley, which debuted on HBO Max and Hulu just last week. A bit too late for my taste. It would have been helpful
during the Oscar race.
It would have been helpful during the voting of the nomination process. Which, can we just start off with that real quick? First,
no.
It got 1.2 million viewers, which isn't all that impressive. But again, I believe we're comparing that to 1.6 for Conjuring, and even 1.9 for Dune. So, again, these ratings are relative, and it was only 4 on the HBO Max side, so there's no accounting for how many views it got on Hulu. Anyway, with that, I think generally speaking, it's been a positive week for Nightmare Alley because it got some love from the Academies, and we'll get to that in a bit. But there's something that I neglected to put on this list, on my list of things to discuss today, that we should probably address at the top, and that is, for all the years that we've been covering award season in the Academy, and for all the shit that we've done in their direction, there's actually something we neglected to mention, and that is the entire time. Because, of course, you would think that if you're a member of the Academy, your one job is to vote on these things. And something caught my attention last week when the president of the Academy announced, and they were bragging that they had the highest voter turnout during the nominating process in the history of the Academy. And I thought that was such a weird thing to brag about, because you just would think that if you're a member of the Academy, you'd vote, and there wouldn't be it wouldn't be considered an accomplishment that they had a high turnout rate. But it turns out, unbeknownst to even me, for all these years of covering in and out the race every year, you're not required to vote for a damn thing if you're a member of the Academy.
I feel that should be like a requirement to stay a member of the Academy. I don't know. That's just me.
I shouldn't be surprised at anything these people do anymore, considering all that we know. But that honestly threw me. It's like, wait, you're telling me that at a bare minimum, they're not even being held to the standard of voting for anything? That's kind of one of the reasons for why you get what you get with them in terms of what they usually nominate.
Shout out to Kirsten Dunst. The only one that seems to do their homework.
The only Academy member in any memory that I can recall that, put their name on it and said, I watched all the movies. I actually do my job. Imagine if we had an Academy with people like her. Mostly people like her. Mm. And it is a group of a little less than 10,000 people, mind you. A little less than 10,000 people.
God damn. They can't even watch the fucking
No!
movie. How embarrassing.
So just wanted to start off with that. Anyway, before we get into the Academy Award nominations, let's go ahead and get into what we saw this week. And this made, I'm not sure how long it'll take. Some things will take a lot longer, that's for sure. Do you have anything off the top for you that you've seen besides the stuff that we'll be reviewing today?
Well, if you take away that, I mean...
Okay, well, all right. So these are films that I've seen this week that... Actually, one of these or two of these you might have seen, so we may have some discussion on this. But some of these movies, I imagine whenever you do see them, we're going to come back and do reviews on them because they're actually pretty good. One of them happens to be the documentary Flea, the animated documentary, or actually the international animated documentary.
Animated
Flea.
Document.
Yeah. It's kind of a mouthful, but it is a foreign film from the country of Denmark, and it is a documentary that is like 99% animated, and it made history today, being nominated for Best Animated Feature, Best Documentary, and also Best International Film. The only movie to ever do that.
That's pretty crazy, yeah.
Yeah, it's really crazy. But it also happens to be pretty great. The story of this movie is deeply depressing.
Your favorite.
Deeply depressing. I think that yeah, especially in documentaries, that seems to be my go-to, right? Just deeply depressing subject matter. You know, some of my favorite movies in documentary happen to be Fahrenheit 11/9 and Leaving Neverland, and God, what can be more depressing than that? Thankfully, this isn't, but it's still it's a real human story about this family having to, as the film suggests, leave their home. You see similar beats in this, although not necessarily all that explored in movies like Encanto or Roma, but more so even also Belfast, where because of violence that is happening in their hometown or their home country, they have to leave to, find refuge, refugees, as they say. But this is a real, life telling of this family that was just basically separated because of happenstance, and, just to get out of the places that, were persecuting them and all the things that they had to do. And it's all centered around, our main character here. And I believe the reason for one of the primary reasons why it's animated is because the identity of the subject could not be revealed to protect them, obviously, for, well, obvious reasons. But it is quite powerful and honestly quite moving too. And one of the best movies of this year. And as it just so happens, as it was nominated today, just this week it was made available on streaming on Hulu, for those that want to go see it. So I'm also, by the way, not finished, but I'm watching another documentary, another nominee tonight for documentary feature, and that is Summer of Soul. That was the directorial feature by Questlove, and it's basically telling the story of what is known as the Black Woodstock, which it's a big summer music festival that happened at the same time as Woodstock in 1969. And I'd never heard of it. I mean, we all know of Woodstock because it was primarily
they just really liked music that year, right? Like, what's going on?
But it's a story of not just exclusively a bunch of artists that came, but it's very much the telling of like what it meant to be Black in America at that time, why it was so culturally significant for that to happen. And at least to me, off the bat, because the first couple of minutes grab you, because like I had never heard of this. I had a music class. Had a great music teacher, you know her, and there was a great history of all the wonderful moments in music in American history. That was never once brought up, at least that I can recall, and that just goes to show you Black erasure that's happened all up and down in this country's history.
So are you specifically blaming that teacher?
I'm blaming American curriculum in the public education system. Which, by the way, is being under siege right now. There are book burnings happening. A whole bunch of conservative and Republican legislatures from or school boards even are going out of their way to ban books such as V for Vendetta, and that's just like, how can you get more ironic than that? If you watch V for Vendetta, it's
very
it's terrible. So yeah, it's all that's happening right now, and it's so far a really great directed and edited documentary. So I would definitely put both of those movies as must sees, and both are on Hulu. So Don't you love it when they put these movies on streaming? It's so much easier on us that can't go and find these movies.
I guess for me, because it's like if it's not on streaming, then it might as well just not fucking exist to us. Because there are literally no other avenues for like.
Yeah, you're so right. I'm still waiting for Licorice Pizza to at least have a VOD component.
Right?
It's not out yet, and it's been like it had limited screenings in late November, and we're in early February, and we're still not, because you still need to see it, and we still need to review it. So, Flea, Summer of Soul, another great film that I don't know where it was. I saw it on VOD. This is Come On, Come On. This is the Joaquin Phoenix film, and this is it is a very, again, low-key, breezy kind of film. Like, it's not hyper-intensive. It's very laid back, but it also is very kind of introspective as well. This journalist basically has to look after his nephew. He had no kind of very limited prior contact, and it's this dynamic of somebody who is not used to being around children and having to pick up the slack while his sister is out caring for someone else, and kind of having a few weeks to raise this child as like I think it was a 9 or 10-year-old. It's a very interesting companion piece to Lost Daughter with Olivia Colman, because you can make the argument of that. Yeah, kind of, because I think both of the films, Lost Daughter and Come On, Come On, have a very honest portrayal of what it is like to be an adult.
Kids.
Well, be an adult and having to raise children. And I feel like you can make the argument that both films have a lot of commonality, but they take very different overall, I think, they land on different sides of the aisle, shall we say, on whether or not children should be had and everything, I feel you can say.
Lost Daughter said, fuck them kids.
And how many ways can you say it? Lost Daughter found all the ways to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another movie we'll be talking about in the weeks to come. So, and Joaquin is a great actor all the time.
Oh yeah, he's a crazy person.
It's just, I cannot believe that he won the Oscar for Joker of all things.
What a stupid fucking win,
right? But he's also he is also a very dynamic performer. Like, you wouldn't know he was quote unquote a crazy person by watching this movie. So there's that. I also saw Cyrano. Peter Dinklage and a bunch of other people, and this is also an adaptation of a musical from years back. When we first saw this trailer, I was like, what is this? I'd never heard of this movie. Peter Dinklage is great in this. I didn't quite care very much for this movie. It started off with a bang, I'll tell you that. Like, I was like, okay, this is going to be one of those that I'm going to be so sucked up and invested in. And then it kind of ended in, yeah.
It's like, eh.
It ended in the place you thought it would be, but it really didn't, at least from my perspective, didn't have much interesting takes to say. It's by Joe Wright, who I believe also directed a fairly competent, well, a good film, but a good film in the way that the Academy would call it a good film, but not all that original. Darkest Hour with Gary Oldman.
Joe Wright is just okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I've noticed that. There's a couple of films where I'm like, I really like that film, or I really like that film. But the vast majority of his films, I walk away going like, that was fine.
Yeah.
That was okay. Like, yeah. Sorry.
I mean, doesn't gotta be apologize. It's your opinion. But I feel like that's the general consensus, though. Darkest Hour didn't get much of any nominations. I mean, it won because of Gary Oldman. That year he won Best Actor for playing Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
It's a real person. It was a good performance. That's half the work, really, with the Academy. Again, Peter Dinklage gives a great performance here, but it's kind of, it left me disappointed because I would have hoped with, Dinklage leading a movie like this and also it being a musical, you'd think it would have more nuance, more substance, but it just kind of exists, honestly. And it was like, oh, okay, well, that was that. That's Cyrano. Then I also saw Nobody. This is starring everyone's favorite actor, Bob Odenkirk.
I've seen that one.
And it's, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's from the producer or the director of John Wick?
I think it was the writer.
Or
I know the producers. I think it was the producers.
The producers of John Wick. And it's very much in that same kind of genre, if you could put it in that way. This was good. This was fun. It's also against type. This is not the role you would expect Bob Odenkirk to play. And I think it's just a reminder of how good of an actor he is to be able to make you believe every part of this role. I had a good time with it. The action was pretty entertaining in spaces. What was his name? It's Doc Hudson. Who's the actor that plays him?
Doc Hudson.
Doc from Back to the Future.
I've never heard of that film.
Oh, you have never? It's right behind you. You have a display behind you of Back to the Future.
Or are you talking about the actor? Christopher Lloyd.
Christopher Lloyd, yes. Yeah, he was fun in this.
To me, that film is a lot of fun.
It is.
It's worth it just to see Bob Odenkirk and Christopher Lloyd just like back to back, just shooting people. Like,
yeah,
that's worth the ticket alone, as they say.
I think it's the best kind of mindless entertainment, and I mean that as a compliment here.
Yeah, it's one of those. I don't know if it's 2 hours. It might be 2 hours, but it doesn't feel that long. It's to the point.
I think it's an hour and a half or an hour and 40. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely not one of the more bloated. There's a lot of bloated movies this year.
Yeah, there is. People don't know when to like just entertain and then get out, right? They're like, no, I'm making art. It must be pushing 3 hours. Shut the fuck up.
I don't mind. You don't mind either. Just long movies, but when every movie gets to be a long movie, then there was an issue. Yeah. That's the thing. When it's all back to back to back.
It's taken the other side. There's so many movies now. It's like, man, this would be good if it were an hour and a half. Like, just stop dicking around on shit no one cares about. You tighten the script, you got yourself a movie.
Yeah. Like, I don't know why I thought of Ghostbusters Afterlife when you said all those things. I know that's by no means the longest movie. I don't even think it's a long movie, but it felt long to me because I was kind of bored for most of it. And when you're bored to begin with, I think it already feels long. Which I guess that's why people hate Eternals, or a lot of people hate Eternals, because it is a very long movie. And if you're bored from the beginning, well, you're not going to have a good time. That's for sure. Yeah, there's nothing worse than being boring at a film. Being bored at a film. Because, like, films are supposed to be great. Like, they can really much, like, at least for me and you, like, they enrich our lives. But when you're watching something that's just boring, well, then that's the
worst thing a movie can be, right? Like,
yeah.
It's just, the worst thing is when you watch a movie and it ends and you're like, it's a big fat nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're trying to search for something. Like, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, Ant-Man and the Wasp, those films come to my mind. It's like...
More Ant-Man and the Wasp, because Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, it does get really stupid.
That's true.
To the point where it's like, this is laughably...
The ending is funny. The beginning is kind of tough to get through.
Yeah. I mean, when their whole thing is like, we're going to sell... Our weapon is a raptor that you gotta point a little laser at. Like a cat, and then they'll follow the laser and attack it.
Isn't that
just
the Jurassic World, not Fallen Kingdom?
yeah, Fallen Kingdom. I thought that's
Yeah.
what we were talking about.
No, we're talking about Fallen Kingdom, not Jurassic World. I thought you were talking about came from Jurassic World, not Fallen Kingdom.
I was talking about Fallen Kingdom.
I was talking about Fallen Kingdom.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, then I don't remember that movie. Then I don't remember that scene in that movie.
Remember, that was the whole thing? They had that like evil raptor creature.
Oh, at the end of the movie.
Yeah, when they're auctioning it off. And the way that it worked was you would point a fucking laser beam at someone, and then it'll follow the laser beam and kill them. Like a cat. You know how you point a
yeah.
And it's like, how is this more efficient than a gun? If you're close enough to me that you can point a little laser beam at me, I can shoot you. I don't know. It's a stupid fucking movie. What were we talking about?
What were we talking about? Okay, then what we saw.
Nobody. Good.
Nobody.
Good.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Next one. You've also seen this. Sing 2. This movie.
Okay. I didn't think you would take me seriously.
You didn't see it? Well, I saw it. So
I said I saw it because I saw the trailer. That was the joke.
Oh, well, you know what? I can't get your sarcasm off a text message unless you make it obvious, and that didn't make it obvious.
You need to just know me by now.
Okay. So I saw this movie. I didn't watch the first one. I have not seen an Illumination movie since Minions back in 2015. I didn't see that in theaters. I saw it at home. And Minions is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. It was just downright terrible in every way imaginable. Sing 2, I could tell from the trailer. I mean, we did see the movie, yes, entirely from the trailer.
Yeah.
But it's not hard to see why it's been so successful, aside from just it having the Illumination name on it. People really do become quite obsessed with this like American Idol voice competition style like story, and then just fun performances on the screen. And when you put animals with singing,
but that's what makes it more disgusting to me, right? Like it feels like it's an algorithm, right?
It
like
is.
People like cute animals. They love their singing competitions. Like everything from the
There's a show right now called The Masked Singer. For God's sakes.
God, so fucking insane. Everything just feels like it was thrown into a corporate blender of like, what do people like, and then it shat out Sing, and Sing 2.
Yeah, and Sing 2 was the only other movie that was making any kind of money. Besides Spider-Man, the last 2 months here at the box office. And this is actually quite extraordinary. Now, it could have to do with the fact that Disney decided to put Encanto on Disney Plus only 30 days after it debuted in theaters. Sing 2 ran laps around Encanto at the box office. That I'd never thought I'd see. That is just... I mean, I knew it would be like big. And I have to imagine Disney putting the film on Disney Plus, which, by the way, I don't think they regret in the least because it blew up. It did blow up. Yeah. I would say Encanto, because it's on Disney Plus, became much more of a culturally significant film than Sing 2. That being said, Sing 2 was hugely successful, and it's still making money, even though the film is already available on PVOD.
But that's what annoys me, because it sort of reminds me of the live action Disney remakes, right?
Yeah,
they come out, make fuck tons of money, and then no one cares about them, right? Because who's talking about Sing 2?
Nobody.
No one gives a shit about Sing 2.
No.
But apparently someone went to go see it. Right?
Yeah, a lot of people went to go see it.
It's the same with the live action remakes.
Yeah.
People are like, oh my God, my childhood. They go and see it, and then they never talk about it again. And that, to me, is all the evidence you need to know that those films are fucking crap.
Yeah.
That they have zero cultural staying power.
Mm-hmm.
Like any. 2 weeks after they're released, boom, no one talks about the live action Lion King or Aladdin or any of it anymore. None of it. Same.
Well, there ain't nothing to say. Sing 2, though, is interesting because it did not receive an Oscar nomination today, but it was getting nominated literally everywhere else, in all the precursors. I saw this film, and I have to tell you, I'm a sucker for this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I really am. And it's so lazy. It's so, like, it's probably the most basic film I've seen in a very long time.
It's so overly telegraphed. You can tell from the trailers. Like, this is what it is, and that's all it is.
They don't even try. But somehow I like this.
All right, I'm ending this call. I'm done. We're done professionally.
You're cutting ties with me.
Yeah.
You're gonna move over to what? Fantasy Fair podcast?
This is your Joe Rogan moment, okay?
Oh, fuck off.
The Fantasy Fair is removing all the episodes where you were in a part of the discussion.
No, listen. I didn't love this, but I did like this, and I'll tell you why I like this.
Okay.
The third act.
The cute animals.
The third act. They actually came up with some weirdly entertaining set pieces for the performances in this, like, talent show that they come up with in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And the humor at times is actually pretty good. And but the characters, they're not characters. The writing is non-existent. And what it's reaching for is not even middle of the road. I think right beneath it. And so it doesn't really have to do much because it's not aiming to do much. Mm-hmm. And all the things that people feel about this, I feel about it too. But I came away with it enjoying it because, hey, I got some good covers out of it. These people can sing, and this was a pretty, like, fun, entertaining talent show within the context of the film, and it worked all right. So there are worse things I could see.
Fuck you.
I didn't pay to see it.
I don't care. I still fuck you.
We need to have you see it, and then get your review.
I did see it. I saw the trailer. That's the film right there. I mean,
to see the whole runtime, not just the trailer of the film.
No.
It probably wouldn't be anywhere near as hilarious as your reaction to Cruella.
Oh my god, that film.
But can you say at least with Cruella, people are talking about Cruella though. Not in like, at least some, because of how weird it was.
But it was also the last one to come out. I don't know. I guess
true.
You're right. I guess it gets by on being like fake rebel, you know.
Got a Golden Globe nomination. Got Oscar nominations for costume.
So did Suicide Squad. I don't give a shit. That don't mean anything. It won. It fucking won.
It won, yeah. It won for makeup, right? Was it makeup?
In the Suicide Squad got nothing. I think that's the ultimate test of which was the better film. Suicide Squad won an Oscar. The Suicide Squad couldn't get nominated for shit.
You know, we should probably think about doing a show of what the worst winners have been, at least in the years that we've been watching. But I mean, last week you had me like speechless because you reminded me that Bohemian Rhapsody literally won the award, and I don't even mean for acting, but for editing. That's fucking terrible. Like, of all things, it's just
these people don't watch the movies. They don't.
Yeah. Which, you know, the reason, yeah, we'll get into all that. But anyway, so I saw that. So as far as TV is concerned, so Hulu is a really great service. They have a lot of great classic sitcoms on there. And I just recently rewatched all of the episodes they had available for I Love Lucy on there. I am somewhat miffed, though, that, and even if you have Paramount Plus, it'll make a damn difference because of the Desilu rights and everything. There are a lot of episodes that just are not available on streaming. Like a lot of really good episodes. So if you do want to watch I Love Lucy on Hulu, just understand it's not the complete 6 seasons. There are episodes from each of the 6 seasons, but it ain't the whole thing. And so some of my favorite episodes of the show is the whole time they're on the road in between New York and Hollywood. And that entire part of the story was just completely skipped. And there were some great episodes in between that. But also if you're on Hulu and if you liked Being the Ricardos and if you liked I Love Lucy, Amy Poehler is going to have a new documentary out next month about the dynamic between Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball.
That'll be interesting.
You know what? I'm mistaken. Not Hulu. Amazon Prime is going to have that documentary out, not Hulu. Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. Because the Being with the Ricardos is on Amazon Prime.
Yes. Prime Video. So, look for that out. And then I've also I've got back to seeing Golden Girls. Classic.
Finally. What has it been, a month?
A year.
Oh.
A year. And then Peacemaker, which continually gets better every week. And I think there was one tweet, there were several tweets, but one of the tweets that I saw this week in response to the show was James Gunn fucking me up with like the song choices he makes. Again, like I don't think there's anyone better than him that knows how to pick a song for what he wants to get across with a sequence or a scene. Because the song particularly, I think it's called Monster by Reckless Love, that was featured last week, where I believe it's one of the police officers that's basically invading the entire unit with her like butterflies. It's the song that plays over that sequence, and it's so good. It is so good. I've been humming it and singing it. It's so good.
While the white supremacists gear up.
Oh, that's right. Yes. All the white trash. Yes.
And I think I said last episode, I was like, ooh, I bet you it's going to be at the same time. No, shit's going to hit the fan.
Yeah. I thought of what you said when I saw it in real time. I was like, oh, damn, Peter was right. It's happening exactly how he said it would.
Especially with, what's his name? Putting on the suit.
Yeah. The White Dragon.
And do you watch the like previews for next episode?
Do they happen at the end of the?
You gotta like
have previews?
You gotta click on them.
No, I don't.
It's like like 5 seconds, like on the next episode.
The only time I've done that was with Agents of Shield. I think when it was airing, but no, I haven't seen the clips.
They show him flying around in the White Dragon. And,
do they?
Yeah.
Oh
like,
shit!
He like shooting blasters and shit with it. I'm very excited for these last 2 episodes. It's gonna be great. And you know what? I like that they're on Thursdays because Wednesdays I'm disappointed
for other reasons. Yeah.
And then Thursday, it's a pick me up.
It really is. Honestly, I cannot believe we're already with only 2 episodes left. Like, where did this go? Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like we were just talking about it. Maybe because like they debuted the first 3 episodes.
Yeah, the first
week,
3.
So
yeah.
That's why it feels like it's happening so fast. But no, I really do love this group. You have that, and I think it was Houston Colley that pointed this out on Twitter. Just the fact that there was this whole sequence where everything stopped and we had John Cena actually perform on the piano in a real emotional moment. Like, we're talking about the comic book genre. Like, no one else is even trying to do anything like that. We can't have everything stop just for an emotional moment or a connection.
See, if it was Star Wars, it'd be like, oh my god, that's the piano from the 1989 Batman film you see in the corner of Wayne Manor. What does this mean?
By the way, happy 90th birthday to John Williams.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
You old fuck.
90 fucking years old. That's crazy. But you're so right about all of that. Some smaller details aside from it having like its own like opening intro with "Do you want to taste it?" The aspect ratio is traditional television, like the full screen of it. It's not like made to look like a movie, like a lot of the MCU shows are so hell bent on doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like widescreen.
16:9.
I like widescreen, but not all the time. I do like. I think Ryan Johnson mentioned this in his audio commentary with Knives Out years ago that, mostly everyone just does the same standard widescreen now, and so part of his inspiration to make for the aspect ratio of Knives Out, which is closer to what you see with Peacemaker here, where it's just the full screen of it, was to just like give it. It was the easiest thing you could do to make it look different than every other movie that's playing. So
I think the main reason people do it is because it's like, oh, it looks cinematic. You know what I mean?
The widescreen, yeah. Yeah, because because widescreen aspect ratio is commonly historically associated with cinema, and the full screen is more with television. Yeah, that's why. Okay. So you're saying that Wednesdays are bad. Yeah. Can I just say that when we were talking last week, I honestly don't know why I'm surprised, but last week we really dug in hard with how much we really dislike to hate what Star Wars has become, especially on Disney Plus, right?
You know what's really funny? It feels like Star Wars heard and said, fuck you.
Yep.
And that FU was in it was the episode.
Mm-hmm. Because, I think last week we were like, this is the worst yet. And they basically were like, hold my beer.
Yeah.
Because the worst was yet to come. Last week's episode of this, which was a Mandalorian episode, not really a Boba Fett episode, but I guess it's all the same now. But
was it even a Mandalorian episode? It was like a...
Well, I mean, last week. I don't mean this one. I mean,
okay. That one was a Mandalorian episode. That one, that one was a load of nothing. This week was also a load of nothing, but there were a lot of pretty bad somethings involved that somehow was even worse. Mm-hmm.
Somehow was even worse than what came before. Everyone saw this and everyone was talking about this, and I have to say, I feel like everything you and I said last week about what the response usually is like was 100% accurate to a T, because it wasn't even an hour after the thing debuted on Disney Plus, which is at midnight on Wednesdays, and the first thing I see is a fan saying, "Staggering. What an achievement."
Can I? Star Wars fans are fucking weird, man. They're a little bit insane.
Can I just say stupid? I don't even feel bad about saying them. I'm just gonna say stupid and dumb and lame and boring.
Because every week, I'm blown away about how good Peacemaker is. Really enjoy it. Really like it. And I see, there's not a lot of tweets about Peacemaker, but, people tweet like, oh, yeah, that was so great. I'm really loving Peacemaker. Maybe they'll say, my favorite DC show. But, no one goes to with Star Wars, no one's like, a triumph. The greatest single hour of comic book television ever created. Nothing, and I mean nothing, will ever compare to this mesmerizing beauty that was Peacemaker episode 6. No one does that. It's a little fucking weird. I don't even remember Marvel people doing that so much, right? Everyone's always like, oh man, this episode was so cool. Did you see how we... they're annoying with the whole, oh, look at this cameo, or look at this Easter egg, but no one's like, this is the single greatest thing ever done, ever put to the face of the earth. You all it. But then for some reason, Star Wars fans will be like, here's just a lineup of characters that and now you're looking at them, and they're ready to declare it the next Jesus Christ. It's so fucking weird. It's so weird to me.
No, you're right. You're 100% right. And I'm just trying to look here during the past week. I'm trying to look at all the
Oh, are you looking for all the tweets
the reactions, right?
The reactions?
I'm just going to read some that here's this one person. I cannot believe what I just watched. That's everything a Star Wars fan can ask for. Just wow. Josh Gad even tweeted out, that was one of the best Star Wars anythings I've ever witnessed with my eyeballs. Agreed. Somebody actually replied to him. Agreed. Period. Historic. Period.
This is why people hate Star Wars fans. I'm sorry. They're so fucking weird.
Matt Ramos, that was the greatest thing I've ever witnessed.
It's not enough to just like something. They can't just be like, I liked this episode. It has to be greater than the birth of their child. Like
Corey Van Dyke, best 45 minutes of TV ever. Speechless.
You're speechless. I'm speechless because there's nothing to say about the fucking episode.
I think there's something to say in the negative.
Oh yeah, but not like about it. Like, what is there to discuss about like?
No, nothing.
The characters or so. Like, I do want to like, or do you have more to read or?
Real quick before we get to the particulars, Grace Randolph. You know, we have a hilarious relationship with that personality. Right?
I love her. He hates her.
No, I think you and I have a lot of enjoyment in watching her content.
I think she's great. Yes, she's very funny.
And not that we agree with her takes, very much so. I disagree with a lot of what she says, and this is no exception. When she said that this hour of television, or this hour of Star Wars, she was even saying that this is the best Star Wars has ever been.
She pretty explicitly said like it's better than the original trilogy.
Yes.
Which what the fuck? I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, cause and like I said, I like to look at the reactions. One, it's very funny, but two, I do try and understand like, okay, where are these people coming from? But every time they give a reasoning for why they liked it, it's just like, Luke and Ahsoka.
What are the reasonings? It's just that because it had this character.
Yeah.
Because it referenced this. That's all they say.
That's literally all they say. That's it. They don't talk about the story or the characters or really because there's no story, there's no character. It's just I don't know. Like there's no, and this is the thing. Even if it was done well, I probably wouldn't be that crazy about it. Because like I've said, it's a different kind of Star Wars. I view Star Wars very differently than a lot of people do. People do. But there is ways to still, even if it's not my Star Wars, you can still win me over by just being good, right? By telling, compelling and fun stories. Like, I know everyone lost their shit about, like, what's his name? Cad Bane being in it.
Yeah. I'm
not mad because Cad Bane is in the show.
Thank you for pointing that out, yeah.
I'm one of the people that kept saying, I want to see Cad Bane in anything, like in a show, whatever. What I'm mad about is he's nothing. Like, this was nothing. If you're going to do a Boba Fett show, he should have dropped in at the end of the first episode, maybe the second, because you want to develop his character along with Boba's character and the rivalry that goes, because people are going to be like, oh my god, it's going to be so awesome. The Boba Fett Cad Bane showdown's going down in this finale. Why is that awesome? If you're just watching this show, Cad Bane just showed up, and first you don't even know his fucking name. He's just a cowboy guy.
Yeah.
That showed up for 2 seconds at the end.
If you didn't watch Clone Wars, why the fuck would you care?
Yeah, like there's nothing to it. There's nothing, and what's annoying is there could be something, because he even says a line where he's like, you know, Boba Fett's not the good guy he pretends to be. He did a bunch of dirty work for the Empire, right? And it's like, why didn't you make this show about that then? Why didn't you make the show about him being an utter and complete piece of shit? And then when he gets, like, crawls his way out of the pit, maybe, because you know how people have, like, there's, like, people that are in, like, gangs, and then they have, like, a near-death experience, and then they have, like, a come-to-Jesus moment?
Yeah.
You could have done that with Boba Fett.
Yeah.
You could have had something compelling with that, and then you throw in Cad Bane, who's this sort of like demon from his past catching up with him, and he's trying to be like, nah, I'm a changed man, and Cad Bane's like, no, me and you, we're the kind of people that can't change, and like this is just the way it's gotta be, right?
But
like
that would be a story.
That would be a story. That would be interesting. I would be one of those people like, fuck yeah, let's see the Boba Fett Cad Bane showdown. Like, yeah, fun, yes, Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
But like, this is nothing. Like.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to understand, as you were saying off the top there, because I am sure there are a lot of people who would think and listen to this conversation at some point, like, how could they, on what earth does somebody who claims to be a fan of Star Wars absolutely loathe, and make no mistake, I loathe and hate everything that happened in this episode.
Yeah.
To probably even greater lengths than it was the last week, of this show. But a lot of Star Wars fans would be asking themselves, how could you possibly hate all of these wonderful characters showing up, especially, well, let me tell you this, especially if you're a fan of the Clone Wars, which I am, why can't you be so moved and like be happy that this happened? Let me tell you this. It actually is even worse for me, the fact that I love characters like Ahsoka and Cad Bane here, because first, as you say, there was nothing to them as far as presence is concerned. Also, this was not the place for this. And that's actually one of the biggest takeaways out of this episode, is that this didn't even feel like an episode of a television season. It really felt like a Star Wars special. Because it was crazy how, like, it was literally like one after the other, just random cameo, and now we're spending a certain amount of time with them in this location, which is completely removed from, forget Boba Fett, but for what came before it. Like, nothing in this episode, as far as like the locations and the characters and the cameos, were connected in any way whatsoever. It was like the most random thing I've ever seen in my life. And I don't see how this is worth getting excited over. And that moment, the way it was filmed anyway, with Cad Bane and his debut in the live action, it is kind of insulting to me how wonderfully that is filmed and how good it looks. Mm-hmm. But it's ruined ultimately for me because it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. It's there because they thought, wouldn't this be cool? And now let's move on to something else.
It's the same thing with Luke. Luke just like, there's nothing interesting going on with Luke's character for him to keep showing up.
It was awful.
It's just an opportunity to just have everyone go like, oh my God, that's the Luke I know. That's the Luke I grew up with. But it's like, but is he doing anything? Not. Is there anything interesting with his? No, yeah. Like, there's nothing to him. And like, I like all these characters. And I think you're finally on I don't want to say finally because you'll get offended, but fuck you, I'm saying finally. I think you're finally on a similar page to me, that like, they really fucked Ahsoka's character. Like,
I was getting there with you after what happened. I think for me, the first real was Mando season 2.
Yeah.
This, yeah, I mean, yeah, you're 100% right, and it's not. It doesn't even. It's not limited to her. It's also somebody else, pretty massive too.
Yeah,
that was fucked here.
But like, her whole thing is like, well, the Jedi Order says you can't have attachment. Like, bitch, you walked away from the Jedi Order because of this bullshit, and you're here going like, now Luke, You have to follow the Jedi Order. Like, what are you doing? Who are you? I
don't recognize these characters.
No.
Not at all.
And like, to me, attachment, maybe it's because like I'm a fucking Catholic. To me, I always assumed attachment was like you couldn't get married, you couldn't fuck, or like some shit like that when they talked about attachment, because the Jedi, especially in the prequels, they were friends with each other.
Yes, they had attachments.
They had very close connections with each other. They would call each other friends. They loved each other, right? And to me, that's kind of the quote unquote attachment going on between Baby Yoda and
Luke or Mando.
And Mando, right? Like it's clearly not lovers. It's a friendship, right?
Right.
That they've sort of developed. So it's weird to go like, you know, you can't have attachments. You can't be attached to it's so strange, especially to hear that coming from Luke. Luke that's supposed to be just hot off. Like, it's insane to me that people will go like, Luke would never turn his back on his nephew. Look at how he saved his dad, right? But there's so much implied within The Last Jedi that shows how his fear of failure and the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders and all of that really, really pushed him to pushed him towards fear, and fear, of course, leads to the dark side in little ways like that. So it's like, okay, I got it. I get it, right? And sort of his resentment of his whole thing of like, I grew up admiring the Jedi, and then I succeeded and I became this world-renowned Jedi, and then afterwards I learned what the Jedi are about, and I'm like, whoa, like, I don't really agree with this. And now he's stuck between a rock and a hard place where it's like, do I continue the Jedi Order even if I don't agree with some of the bad things they've done, right? And it's him just not understanding he needs to learn from the mistakes and, you know, all of that. Okay, like, to me, I get that. But him, what is this, like 5 years after Turn? Is it 10? 5? And he's just like, you can have no attachments. What? That's so fucking weird. I don't know.
It's a really warped reading of it, even in the context of how it was presented in the prequels. And I really have to wonder, where the fuck is that coming from? Because Filoni wrote a lot of the stuff in the Clone Wars, and I don't understand what's happened to him. I feel like he's becoming a worse writer as he goes on. And I don't know if it's the influence from Favreau, but something is wrong here. It's gotta
be Favreau, because Favreau writes some shit episodes.
He writes all of the episodes, and part of what's really pissing me off here is he's written every single episode this season, but for whatever reason, people have decided that Robert Rodriguez is to blame for why the first 4 episodes were nothing.
Because he's their god and savior. Him and Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. Even though they produced, I don't even want to say it's bad. It's just nothing. Just nothing Star Wars. It's the most hollow Star Wars. Because even the prequels, Lucas's heart, I think, shines through a lot of it.
It does. Yes, it does. As hard as it may be sometimes, it does.
He at least has a point of view. You know what I mean?
Point of view, yeah. And vision.
Yeah.
Ambition.
And here,
meaning, purpose, all those things are there.
The only ambition is to show you things that you've already seen and just be like, look, this is Star Wars, remember? This is also Star Wars. Oh my God. In just a few hours, the finale's going to happen.
Yeah.
Do you want to take predictions? Because I had predicted that I think I was wrong in my prediction that Luke will go in, but you know why?
Well, one of your predictions was that Boba was going to ride the Rancor.
Oh yeah, 100% that's happening. It has to.
Still? Okay.
Yes. Okay. If it doesn't happen, then what the fuck was the point of that whole scene with him like going like,
what was the point of anything here?
Yeah, that's true. Fuck. I don't know. But the only reason I said I think Luke would ride in and help is because I knew for a fact that they were going to show Luke again, because I knew they couldn't help themselves. Like, that was the whole thing. But I didn't even think they would go this far, where they would just stop doing a Boba Fett show.
Yeah.
And then just go off, just fuck off and do some other thing. Like, I didn't think they would go that far, where they would just...
No.
We are no longer a Boba Fett show. That's insane to me. So, but I think...
2 weeks in a row.
It feels like this whole whatever this is, Boba Fett show, I feel like it almost exists just to make it so we see the reason why Baby Yoda or Grogu is there episode 1 in The Mandalorian season 3. Because I think his whole decision is going to be like, I choose to be a Mandalorian. And
which,
then
from a storytelling perspective, that's one of the things I hate and that particularly pissed me off. Just in principle when you do this, right? Because you like, if you're a fan of The Mandalorian, but you're not watching Boba Fett, wouldn't you feel pretty like cheated if you missed out on like huge moments in these characters happening elsewhere that's not part of the show? It's like that last episode of Loki, which
yeah,
the whole show stopped and it was something else entirely.
The last episode of, if you just watch The Mandalorian, the last episode of Mandalorian season 2 is him tearfully saying goodbye.
Goodbye, yeah.
He even took off his mask. It's a huge emotional moment. And then episode 1's going to open up with like, all right, we're back. I guess that meant nothing. Because think about it. The first season is about like, I got to get him away from the Empire. Second season is, I got to get him to the Jedi. And then the third is like, well, never mind. He's just with me now. Like,
That's so...
And then of course setting up the season 3, which I think I called from before we even had a trailer for The Mandalorian, is gonna be retaking Mandalore.
Let me read this real quick, because I mean, I'm just too I'm just sad, but I'll just read this to get up. This is from Gavia Baker Whiteclaw on Twitter, and she wrote a piece for DailyBot, a recap of this episode, which she called a painful misuse of an iconic character. This is what she said. Traditional Jedi training requires children to be separated from their families, something the movies depict in an ambivalent light. Sure, the old Jedi Order produced plenty of great heroes, but its restrictive mindset also led to Anakin's downfall. In later generations, we see Luke and Rey flourish while embracing their emotions, debunking the idea that Jedi must forgo all attachments. This makes the Luke/Grogu subplot doubly baffling, because Luke is suddenly portrayed as a harsh taskmaster to a toddler. The Last Jedi hinted that Luke was a flawed mentor at this point in his life, struggling with the pressure of rebuilding the Jedi Order alone. However, this Boba Fett episode portrays him in a uniquely negative light, to the point where he's almost unrecognizable. In the original Star Wars trilogy, Luke evolved from a whiny teenager into a seasoned warrior, tempered by a wry sense of humor, a passion for adventure, and a freely expressed love for his friends. He's powerful yet goofy and likable, qualities that a CGI mannequin can't express. Above all, though, Boba Fett's version of Luke is just thoughtlessly unpleasant. During an extended training montage, Luke puts Grogu through his paces: meditation, athletic exercises, and being attacked by a flying droid. It's the kind of stuff Luke did when he was 20, but Grogu is literally a baby. Due to his unusually long lifespan, Grogu belongs in a preschool for the next 50 years. In that context, Luke's methods feel inappropriate and cruel. Do you want to talk about that real quick?
We talked about this. Even that training scene, which could have been used to like do new interesting stuff and do some interesting character work. Like, I don't mean to bring it up, but the way we saw in The Last Jedi, like those Luke's lessons,
right?
Genuinely interesting. You got a lot of interesting character stuff, learned a bunch of point of views, pushed the characters and the story forward, and it was new ways of training.
Yeah.
Which this is, they literally just copied every training that you saw in the original trilogy,
Mainly Empire.
Mainly Empire, even when it didn't make sense. Why is there physical training where, of course, Grogu isn't doing anything because he's a fucking baby, and it's just Luke running around and doing hops, and like the whole point of that in Empire is that Yoda is training him, and that's why he is doing the physical labor. And to me, what was great about that is Yoda's testing him, or trying to show him that it's not about, you know, your physicalness. I don't think that's a word. Physicality. It's your mental determination, capacity, and strength. Yeah. Like that's where it's gonna come. And he was doing that through pushing him physically. He was strengthening him mentally. Because remember, he was like, "Oh, I can't do anything." Like he was a whiny bitch at that time, and that was sort of the lesson. And here it's like, well, why is he doing it, right? Because Grogu's the one that's supposed to be learning. How is he learning just watching him do backflips? Because
it's that thing from Empire. But
remember when he did this? Remember how he had Yoda in his back? Well, now he has Grogu on his back. Remember. They even do the exact same flip.
The
same fucking flip. And then, yeah, it's like having the little ball shooter thing. Like, he's a baby. Like, how about he learns to talk first? Because that's another thing. Like, they want to pretend like they want to have it both ways. He's a tiny little precious baby that can't do nothing, or he's like semi-adult that has a understanding of everything that's going on. If that were true, why can't he even fucking talk? He hasn't even said a word yet. He just makes baby goo goo gaga noises, which tells me mentally he is a baby. Like, it's basically fucking child abuse. Like, it's so weird.
Well, you know, that moment where, well, actually, I'll go right here. At one point, he even forces Grogu to have a flashback to the destruction of the Jedi Temple when all of Grogu's caregivers were murdered. You'd expect Luke to apologize for bringing up such a painful memory, but instead, the show treats it like a normal flashback scene, with Luke advising a student that the galaxy is a dangerous place.
Yeah, like that's it.
And he's the one that instigates him having that flashback.
And it's insane to, again, I guess that's the kind of lines and shit you have to do when you don't actually have an actor who can actually do a performance, just like someone with a stoic face. But like the Luke in that time period would probably be apologetic.
Right.
And be like, you know, I'm sorry for having you relive that, you know. I heard stories, but I had no idea what it was like at that time. Or, you know, just a bonding moment. But it's really hard to bond when you have two puppets and the one that's a foam baby alien is the one that's able to emote the most. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's how do you do anything with this? And the answer is you don't.
Clearly. The thing is, to me, it also serves no purpose. Like everything else, it serves no purpose, because what ultimately is shown here, what you are shown is what was already laid out in detail in that episode where Ahsoka made her debut in Mando Season 2. Oh, that he was on the Jedi Temple, during the Clone Wars, and they got him out while Order 66 was happening. We already knew that. This scene provides no new information. All it does is show a flashback to something we already knew happened. But look at the reaction in Star Wars fans. Like, we saw live action Order 66 again. Can you believe that?
And and you know what? That's why that flashback exists.
Yeah.
To go like, badass. We're supposed to look at this fucking baby's trauma and go, badass. Oh my god. You see how they're like pew, 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 the Jedi? Oh my gosh. It's just the weirdest emotional reactions that are expected, right? Like it and then you told me the Twi'lek lady, who
Yeah.
I guess runs a casino, I guess she died.
She got blown up.
Did that happen in like 2 seconds? Because
Yeah.
I don't even remember. I don't remember.
The movie, the show is moving, from location to location. It like happened quick, and then we moved on.
How embarrassing!
It's fucking embarrassing. Later on, Ahsoka praises Luke's teaching process, which makes her look bad as well. Unlike the vibrant hero of the Clone Wars series, she's now an instructable figure who nods wisely in the background. Huh?
But this is the thing. You know what Ahsoka would do? Ahsoka would get in his face and go, "These are all the reasons why I left the Jedi Order.
Yeah.
I loved your dad. He was like a father to me, and he was a friend. You remind me so much of him," which she does say.
That's all she says is "so much like your father," smiles, and then walks off screen.
But this is the thing. She could say that, and she's like, in the good ways and the bad, right? Like, if you continue down this path, we saw what that leads to. Like, your job is to be different. Create a Jedi Order that's better, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. That's because you know why? Because you have one character over here and another character over here, and then there's like conflict between them. And that's something we don't like get in this show. Anytime there's a hint of conflict, it's immediately squashed.
Yeah.
Like even with the Boba Fett episodes, like Boba Fett conflict with
Fennec Shand.
Black Wookiee squashed.
Oh, yeah.
Boba Fett conflict with the fucking Newsies,
Yeah.
squashed. There's no like power struggle. It doesn't have to be a literal power struggle, but just like sort of a back and forth of like, you don't know what you're doing, blah blah blah, between him and Fennec. Just something, nothing, squashed. Like she just chooses to follow him. Like he's I don't fucking know. And it's so boring. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Like again, we're at the finale. What is this story about? I guess he's gonna take on the Pikes. But we have so little understanding of who or what the Pikes are. I guess they're scary.
There's no reason to care.
Why
whatsoever.
do I care? Yeah. And then he even had that whole thing of like, I'm tired of being sent out on jobs where people are too stupid. They don't give a shit about people like us.
That was one part of one conversation in 6 episodes of television. And everything else around it had nothing to do with that exchange and dialogue.
But what doesn't help is he's stupider than everyone around. Jabba was a much better mob boss than
Okay, let me finish. Let me go on to the next part.
Go on.
The show doesn't fully endorse Luke's attitude. After all, we're predisposed to sympathize with Din Djarin, who wants to reunite with Grogu. However, it's hard to believe that writer Jon Favreau meant Luke to come across this badly. The most charitable explanation is that Luke is already sowing the seeds of his own failure by recreating the flaws of the old Jedi Order. That's a common interpretation of his life during this period in canon. But while that makes sense on a macro level, it doesn't explain his personal behavior. This version of Luke Skywalker is dull, strict, and unlikable, a totally different personality to his depiction in the movies. His main traits here are being a humorless and mean to a toddler. An especially wild move considering the fact that Ben Solo is about 4 years old at this point. So while we can excuse a certain amount of misguided teaching philosophies, Luke has at least met a toddler before. And then the overall consensus with this piece. At this point, it's hard to deny the pointlessness of this show. After 4 weeks of failing to give Boba Fett a coherent personality or arc, we segued into a standalone chapter of The Mandalorian, followed by an extended fan service cameo for Luke Skywalker. And while fan service is an accurate term here, it's hard to see how fans are actually being served. But the people behind this show are determined to avoid interesting choices, focusing their energy on empty appeals to nostalgia. Bingo.
Yeah. I mean, that's all the show is. Remember when, like, I guess I've given this speech a million times, but to me, what always set the original Star Wars trilogy apart is there was more to it than just lightsabers and stuff like that. There was an interesting human core to it. And even George Lucas, right? Like it was very much, there was a political core to it as well. He
right.
talks about it. It's a fun kids space fantasy, but there's actually subversive, interesting elements underneath it all. Political undertones, a real beating heart. There's stuff that it's trying to say and stuff that it's trying to be. And all that these new Star Wars is trying to be is just, I don't know. Like to me, I described it to you as like the meet and greet at Disneyland of like it. Right. To me, it feels like a Star Wars meet and greet, right? Where it's like, oh, hello, this is Cad Bane. Isn't he cool? Don't you want to take your picture with him? Now here comes Luke Skywalker with cute fucking Babu on his back. What's his name? Don't you want to take your picture? That's what it is. That's all it is. It's a meet and greet. Which would be fine if we were at Disneyland, but we're not. So
yeah, but more than this, nothing. I mean, honestly, I gotta say, I was pretty angry the way the episode ended and that choice that Luke gives the baby. I thought that was the single most cruel thing Luke has ever done as a character. And it absolutely makes no sense for that choice to even be a thing. And yet it's praised endlessly. Like, no one, when you talk about how great this episode was, very few people actually talk about the story. And when they do, they're convinced genuinely that there is a story here, but I don't personally get it. And honestly, it's like, I don't know. It's hilarious how, as the week went on, there was this contingent of people on film Twitter that were like, why are people getting so angry at Star Wars fans liking Star Wars? And I want to push back against that because, I feel like the why is how we began this conversation. Look at how they treat it. It's like every week, this is the best episode of television there ever was or ever will be. It's the overreaction to this that is so enraging, but even more so just the blatant hypocrisy. Like the way that this Luke character was mishandled in this episode, how it was basically character assassination. This is everything they claimed The Last Jedi did but didn't do. But here, when it's presented to them in front of their face, they can't even recognize it. And from my perspective, if you can't see that, then I don't care about you. And you're not a voice who should be listened to.
I just think it's funny.
I don't. I mean, part of it is funny, but it mostly is just upsetting. And I'm terrified for what they have in store for us tonight. Even though I shouldn't even say I'm terrified because we know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
It just depends on the how they're going to actually do it. So, enough of that shit. Let's get onto this. So, the Academy Awards unveiled their nominations today. It's interesting because there has yet to be a single televised award show this entire season, but here we are at the Academy Award nominations on February the 8th. The actual Academy Awards will not take place until March 27th, so we're quite a bit away. Usually we get the nominees, I think, at least a month out. This is a little over a month out, almost 2 months out, before the actual ceremony takes place. And this is how the cookie crumbled, as it were. So I'm not going to go over all 20 whatever nominees. I'm only going to say that the nominees for Best Picture and Best Director and then I'm going to say which movies got the most nominations, and then from there we can go with like what our takeaways were, what surprised us, and that's how we're going to do it. If you want to look up all the nominations, feel free to just go on Film Twitter, and you'll find them all then and there. So the nominees for Best Picture were Belfast, Coda, Don't Look Up, King Richard. By the way, I'm going to stop right there. That's a very poor start, all right, at least for me. It's like, man, like, boom, boom, boom. That's like, what, 4 abysmal ones in a row that it's like, whoa, this is how we're starting off the Best Picture list. Belfast, Coda, Don't Look Up, King Richard. Oh, boy. But then it picks up because then you have Drive My Car, the Japanese film, Dune, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley, yay! The Power of the Dog, and West Side Story. This is the first time since, I believe, 2010 that we have 10 nominees. Usually it's been 8 or 9, but they've since rectified that, and now from this point going forward, unless they change it again, there will now for sure be 10 movies in there. And I'm very happy because I don't think Nightmare Alley would be in this list if it were just a 9. Because Nightmare Alley has had a very abysmal turnout the entirety of awards season. If you just look at those precursors, it's barely gotten anything. And so the fact that there are 10 nominees, that they had to pick 10 movies, I think it's to it helped Nightmare Alley the most. So ultimately, what do I think about this list of this list of films? I think really when it comes down to it, Peter, the only time you and I have been quite pleased, and pleased is relative, but I would say maybe just kind of like we accept every movie that's on here, and generally speaking, this is a great list of films nominated for Best Picture. I think that's without there being any major groaners, or films that have no business being here. I think the only time you and I have felt that way was last year, which was 2020's nominees, where it's like, honestly, I'm not angry at a single one of these. I feel like every film that was on that list had a right to be there. Now that could be because there were hardly any films that came out in 2020, and so there was more of a consensus about like what should be on this list.
Yeah.
But that being said, it was still relatively a good, crop of movies that got into all those categories, particularly with Best Picture. And so what do we have this year? Well, I think we have a return to normal with how we usually feel like, and where it's a mixed bag, kind of down the middle, because there are some genuinely great films that are in here and are deserving and we're happy to see here. At least I'm happy to see here. But then there are also the head scratchers, because there are 10 movies, especially in 2021, which I feel, and I think you feel the same way, was an exceptional year. And there are so many other movies that I feel could have taken the place, particularly of movies like Belfast and Coda and Don't Look Up and King Richard, which, and honestly, frankly, even Power of the Dog, which are the kind of movies that are overly nominated here. They've overly nominated in the past and have over awarded to in the past, the same kind of film. And really, there are people, clearly, the Academy loves these movies, which is why they're here. They're feel-good movies. They're standard. You could even say they're safe for the most part. And that's kind of why as I grow older, they just become less and less interesting to me. Like, I don't think any of these movies are genuinely bad. I just think they're just very vanilla, and we've seen this exact same movie here every other year before and win every other year before. And it just reinforces certain stereotypes of like the taste that these people have. But then also it's like, it kind of, it's a negative reinforcement on how a lot of people perceive or feel that movies should only aim to be feel good. And when most of your nominees are feel good, then it kind of reinforces that negative like perception of films. And like, I love feel good movies. I love movies that make me feel good. That's not an alien concept. We all can relate to that. But to say that all film should be or movies that make you feel good is very straining and very limited, and I think pretty toxic. That doesn't suggest that I think that, the opposite of feel-good films should have like priority here, because quite frankly, Power of the Dog is not a feel-good movie.
No.
It's seemingly gonna win Best Picture, but I don't want it to win Best Picture because I don't think it should. So I'm not saying the opposite either. So I think half the movies here are what we've seen before. And you know what? Let me backtrack on one thing I said. Don't Look Up is the one film that has no business being here. Don't Look Up is honestly a complete joke to me.
You have not seen it.
Have you?
No.
Okay. But we've explained before why we're not going to see that film.
Yes, we
I feel
have.
like everything we've seen from how it's been received, I feel vindicates how we feel we're going to feel if we watch this movie. And we've said before, we're not watching this film out of concern for our mental health. Because this movie ultimately has nothing interesting to say. This movie has no purpose but to basically say what we already know, and that is we're fucked. And this life is fucked. And collectively as a species, there's no consensus. And I mean, we don't need to, because we've seen the last 2 years. Like, this isn't something that needed to be filmed. So the fact that it's done this well is just whatever. That's my take.
I think the point of the movie is we don't have to be fucked. I think the point of Don't Look Up is that you should look up.
Okay.
But even then, I don't have what's the word? Faith in institutions.
Yeah.
Put it that way. Like, we haven't really talked about this, but Democrats have a super majority in California, right?
Oh, they killed single-payer healthcare.
And they killed single-payer healthcare in California.
And I can't, for no apparent reason.
Well, we know why.
Well, we know why, but I mean, for no obvious reason that they can feed to their friends in the media and then tell the rest of us. There's been really no official explanation, but we know the real reason is because their donors don't want single-payer healthcare because it'll eliminate the insurance business and the insurance industry. And how dare they think it's a bad thing for people to make money off people dying?
Yeah.
By the way, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but a few weeks back, I had a cousin that passed away from brain cancer because it didn't have his insurance couldn't clear his procedure in time for him to have possibly saved his life. And he was 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's particularly enraging and depressing.
How do you have faith in any of this? With that kind of, with that reality, because that is horrifying. That's evil.
Yeah.
To me, that is
it
evil. Is. But that's an evil that happens every day, and it's just, man, because we're California, right? Apparently the communist center of the world.
Yeah, if you read some outlets, they'll tell you that. Yeah.
We're the communist center of the world, and we have super majorities of Democrats at all levels of government, and we have a governor that ran on Medicare
on
for
single
all,
payer,
on single payer, not Medicare for all, single payer, and we can't do it.
Because, and this is what happens every single time, and I think it's also a microcosm of what's happening on the national level too, is we've just had a Democratic presidency with a Democratic Congress replace an authoritarian right-wing government in the Trump presidency and a Republican-controlled Senate and everything. They just replaced them with all of these promises of what they were going to do, and they get into power and they do nothing. And they're going to be replaced in this fall with a Republican Congress and most likely a Republican presidency in 2024. And then, well, we'll see what happens then. But the point is, that it's a microcosm of what happened here in California, what's happening in Washington, because the Democrats have power.
Yeah.
But they do nothing with it. They do absolutely nothing. Like right now, Marianne Williamson said this beautifully the other day on the air, that right now the president can cancel all student loan debt. He can basically, decriminalize marijuana, and he can make Medicare for all an actual thing because of what's happening in the pandemic. It'll be challenged in the courts, but he can make it a thing through executive orders. There's a lot of things he can do on his own, but he won't do.
He just won't, right? And a lot of people will chalk that up to like, well, it's the national stage. He has a slim majorities. You have to deal with the blue dog Democrat, all of that. So it's like, okay, a communist center of the world, California, can you do anything? No. So then it's like, great. So like, so that really tells me that Washington, you're really just never going to be able to do anything then. Because if we can't do it here, how in the fuck are you people ever going to?
There's no desire to.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no desire to actually fundamentally change anything. And that's kind of what's so depressing now. It's like it used to be that I thought at least we had a Democratic Party that fought for working people. We don't. We have a Democratic Party that refuses to fight anything. And I think ultimately it's just sad because you put all that next to what the right is doing right now. The right wing they don't rest. They don't stop. Every waking moment is to preserve their ideology and enforce it on other people's lives in every possible way they do. In the last 2 years, they've done everything from eliminate voting rights to outlaw abortion, to outlaw or to fund campaigns that spread misinformation about all kinds of anti-vax, anti-mask attitudes. And it's now even infected, even more so than before, public education by removing a huge list of books that were written by Black people and gay people. And now even books that teach about the Nazis in certain in school systems. And now there are book burnings happening at certain parts of the country, like the Nazis did. It's just hard right now to live in this, like, in 2022 in America and not be convinced that we've already fallen to what's about to, befall the rest of us, and that is the neo-Nazi movement. There were literal, not even neo-Nazis, but just there was actually a Nazi rally somewhere in Florida. That's a thing that happened. Like, It's all happening again. The biggest issue right now in Americans' minds is, and my parents talk about this every single day, it's inflation. Everything has gone up. And the president didn't cause this, but he's not talking about it every day, and he's not doing anything to resolve that, or to at least convince people that he's trying to do anything about it. I know inflation's being used as a talking point by the right to distract from other things, and even the Democrats as well as this, but it's a real issue that I feel a lot of Americans would at least be receptive to hearing about if anyone would bother to talk to them about their issues, because that's the most pressing thing to them, because they feel it in their pocketbook every single day, and yet it's not a thing.
I mean, people care about how they are affected tangibly every single day of their lives.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the quickest way to help people tangibly is to, like we've already said, cancel student loan debt.
Yeah.
You know how many people would directly be affected in a positive light if you were to do something like that? And it wouldn't be everyone, right? But it would be people could hold something up and go like, he helped me, right? Like,
yeah.
In the most black and white terms, he helped me in a big and bad way.
The single biggest accomplishment of this administration was a $1,400 check a year ago.
And they said $2,000, and then when they won, they're like $2,000 total. You already got 600.
This has happened too many times to be they're just liars.
Jesus
they're just liars, and they pretend they don't lie in the first place. and I'm not interested anymore. I'm so done with it, and I really do. I would be of the mind where I hope they lose, and they deserve to lose. But it just sucks that we live in a country that our only options are a corrupt, weak ass party or a Nazi party.
Yeah, it's literally that. So you don't even have the ability for like complacency, or just like, you can't even tell them to go fuck themselves, because it's like, well, it's this or literal fucking Nazis, right? And seeing as I don't like Nazis very much, I guess we have to keep fighting for this, or at least these types of people.
You know what also offends me about Don't Look Up? It's that I feel like this was watched by a lot of people on Netflix. I still think like a lot of people would watch that movie and feel good about themselves, because that's not the world that we live in yet. I think a lot of people legitimately still, even though how over the top the film most likely is, still wouldn't grasp that that's how bad things have gotten.
Yeah. I don't think people realize how close we are to just losing democracy in this country. Like completely. No. Like, just...
There are many people that are going to vote in this midterm election to vote out the Democrats and vote in the Republicans. One, because the Democrats did nothing for them, and two, they did nothing for them on inflation, thinking Republicans will do something about inflation because they've been fed the narrative all their lives.
They're business owners.
Right. But in reality, nothing will be done about that. The rich will have more tax cuts, and all of the time the right will use in their time in power is to strip away their rights even further. Unless you're white.
White and rich.
And straight.
Yes. A lot of caveats.
Yeah. So that's why when you look at Don't Look Up, it's like, well, and I think some people have even said that it does, which is weird because this is co-written by, well, not really co-written, but David Sirota name is on it, and then Adam McKay, who's a hard lefty. And I agree with his politics completely. Mm-hmm. But I think some criticism of the movie has said that it both sides the situation.
Maybe in the way that it both sides is that it says like Democrats are useless too.
Which is true.
Which in that case, I would agree with the movie. I assume that's probably what it says.
Yeah.
Like, they're just as useless. Well, maybe not just as useless, but they're still pretty fucking useless.
Yeah, Joe Biden is a pretty weak-ass president. I don't think I've ever had a weaker president in my lifetime, that's for sure.
No.
And honestly, I hope he loses. I hope he's humiliated publicly. I know it'll cost us more if he loses than he wins, but I legitimately I have so much hatred thrown in his direction for what he is letting happening to the rest of us.
I hope he loses the midterms. I'll say that.
Well, I can hope. Forget it. I'm not gonna go there. Anyway, Don't Look Up. I wouldn't include this on this list. Well, your thoughts on this list of nominees?
It's not as bad as I thought it might be. Dune's on good. There. Nightmare Alley's on there. There's some all around. There's some good ones that I'm glad made the cut.
Mm-hmm.
Same goes. I don't know if you said it yet. I usually zone out when you read the nominations, but animated, I'm pretty happy.
I only read the nominees for the movies. Dude,
okay.
For Best Picture, I haven't gotten anywhere else.
Fine.
We'll get to those in a minute. No, I'm just talking about like these 10 movies in particular.
I mean, obviously there's some I don't agree with, but like overall, it's not the worst list.
No,
it's pretty.
It's not
pretty. All right, it's pretty good.
It's not the year where we had Green Book, Bohemian Rhapsody, and Black Panther, and a whole bunch of useless crap.
Yeah.
So there's some good ones in here too. Director, that one was interesting, right? Because there was a notable snub. Denis Villeneuve was snubbed out of Best Director for inexplicable reasons. There were a lot of people today that were asking themselves if there's ever been a movie that had this many nominations and then just go on to miss Best Director. Dune got 10 nominations, including
That's
Best Picture.
A lot of fucking nominations.
It's a lot of nominations that it did not get for directing. And I myself am trying to figure out what the thinking was there, but here are the people that did get nominated, right? So you had Paul Thomas Anderson for Licorice Pizza. Like, he usually always gets in. He got in last time for Phantom Thread. Jane Campion for The Power of the Dog.
She's
right now
that.
she's winning that in a cakewalk. Kenneth Branagh for Belfast. And apparently he made history. Oh, actually, they both did. Kenneth Branagh made history because he's now the first person to get nominated in like 8 different categories in the Academy. Directing, writing, acting, producing, and then I guess also editing and other stuff.
Makeup.
Too. Yeah. And then also Jane Campion is the first woman to be nominated a second time in the Best Directing category.
That sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, not for her, but like just...
That stat is depressing.
Yeah.
Is what you meant to say. And then we also have Rasuke Hamaguchi, the Japanese director for Drive My Car. Every now and then they have... this particular branch does like to give a nod to the international... Like last year we had Thomas Vinterberg, who directed Another Round. And then other years we had Kawakatsuki, who directed Cold War. So they do this every now and then. And Steven Spielberg for West Side Story.
Oh, that's another one West Side Story got in.
Yeah, that one is a surprise because it honestly seemed kind of likely that West Side Story was going to severely underperform. If only because I like because I like it. And oftentimes, if I love something, it's bashed.
Doomed.
It's doomed. Yeah, it's doomed. Steven Spielberg is now, I think, the only person to be nominated for this category in 6 different decades, or in 6 consecutive decades.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
he is,
and I think he is now also. He is either now the most or the second most nominated for producer in the history of the Academy Awards for Best Picture.
Wow. Well deserved.
So, yeah, at 75 years old or 75 years young. It's a lot of nominations, a lot of love. And there were a lot of thinking that people would, that Spielberg would be the one to miss in this category because he's won twice already, I believe.
Yeah.
For Best Director.
Mm-hmm.
And has been nominated a bunch of times. And I feel like Spielberg kind of falls in that list of people like Hanks where like, you're legendary, you've won before. Maybe we don't feel the need to like bring you back because you've already been there and done that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was happy because I feel like this is his best directed movie in at least 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
So
for sure.
This was definitely like an earned nomination, I feel. Like he directed the hell out of this movie.
Fantastically directed, yeah.
The problem, though, that is a bit of a bittersweet moment is I don't know who... Well, I would say I know who else, but like it meant that Denis got snubbed. Denis Villeneuve. And it's the weird thing, too, because he hit all the precursors. He was included in all of the award shows and guilds. But then this year, I think the only thing I can think of for why he wasn't included was because some of the voters thought, well, we'll get him back in for Dune Part 2 or Dune Part 3.
I think in their mind, it's like, it's a blockbuster.
I would agree with you 100%. I think that's also part of it as well. Let's be real here. But George Miller also got in here for directing a blockbuster. That's Mad Max Fury Road.
I think they like
well-deserved
George Miller
nomination too.
More.
That's true.
He's a staple name.
That's true.
He's like Spielberg.
All of those things you're saying are correct. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, Denny's been nominated here twice before. For Arrival and then one other one. And then tonight, he also got nominated for producing and writing Dune, but not for directing.
That is weird.
So either there was a rationalization that they'll get him back next time, or it just was the luck of the draw. when the ballots were submitted.
This tells me, I mean, Dune 2, come on now. Guaranteed, right? Like, get all these damn Oscars.
Come on, I feel like the expectation, at least for my part, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that Dune 2 is going to be better than Part 1.
For
I
sure.
mean, it kind of has to be.
Yeah. It's most of the it's bigger, more action, more character stuff.
Right.
So it's the second and third act that's where all the fun shit happens, right? Of any story. So
like the screenplay nomination is nice because again, for many decades, this was like the unadaptable Dune. Like, how do you bring that to the medium of film and put that on the screen? But Denis did it, and so the screenplay nomination is definitely well deserved. Directing, it would be, but it's not here. And I'm looking at the other nominees. I think Campion is well deserved. She was great.
Well
absolutely. But I'm looking at Adam McKay. I'm sorry. Wait, no, he's not in there. Sorry, wrong category. I'm looking at Paul Thomas Anderson. I think deserves to be in here because I think Licorice Pizza was a great movie, and I can't wait for you to see it because it is just the most joyous experience I've had all year. So I'm happy he's in here, but I'm looking at everything else, and I haven't seen Hamaguchi's film yet because it's not available on PVOD, Drive My Car, but I can't wait to see it. It's actually surprising that this got nominated because there were, it was a video I shared with you recently that a lot of voters didn't feel they couldn't get past the 3-hour runtime to even begin watching it. So that was surprised that it's even in here.
They probably just heard it's good. Okay.
There it is. Yeah. I'm not watching it, but I'll vote for it. Yeah. You're right. It's Kenneth Branagh who I would take out in a heartbeat. Like, because here.
But it's Kenneth.
It's Kenneth Branagh. He's great. This is the best directed movie he's made in 10 years. But it still is not in a list of best directed movies this year. And I feel like, well,
it's black and white though.
Belfast, overly, I would say, loved, but not surprisingly, it is the Academy. Yeah, I would take out Branagh for Denis, but at the same time, you know whose name should be here? It's Guillermo del Toro.
That's true.
And he's not. So it was a highly competitive year. And Nightmare Alley getting in for Best Picture was a legit surprise. I was honestly convinced it would get nothing as far as nominations were concerned, but it got 4, I think, which was very surprising. So yeah, that's where it is. As far as like picture and director, look, let's be real here. Power of the Dog got 12 nominations. Fucking 12 nominations. It got in everywhere. It got in sound, which wasn't expected. It got its 4 main leads in all the different categories. Well, actually, it got 2 actors for Best Supporting Actor with Cody Smith-McPhee and Jesse Plemons. It got Kirsten Dunst for Best Supporting Actress, and it got in Benedict Cumberbatch for Best Lead Actor. It's the only movie that got nominations in picture, directing, writing, editing, and acting. I don't see how it loses Best Picture. I just don't. I feel like this is over.
Probably.
And if it isn't,
It'll
the only other
Belfast.
thing Belfast. And either way, I don't care.
Yeah, it's a boring race.
It's very boring because I don't care for either of the films really in the long run of it. And I just, okay, well, great. I mean, not great, but whatever. Dune did get 10 nominations. It got for Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, Visual Effects, which it will win, Costume Design, Original Score, Film Editing, Makeup and Hairstyling, Cinematography, and Production Design. All very well deserved. And I think also, by the way, here's the thing with Dune. This is an example of, I'm trying to, like, why is Dune here? Other than, I know that it's great. It's one of my favorite movies and it deserves to be here. But it's a blockbuster. And so, this is an example of like Mad Max, where every now and then a blockbuster like Mad Max or The Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, that it just gets in here for the craft work. And I have to think like, okay, but what's the reasoning? Why do ultimately they're here because the Academy as a whole, they feel like, okay, they got the memo. This one will allow. We've been told that this is allowed and this is respected, so we'll go ahead and allow this to be in our ceremony, right? But I feel like really Denny's name is on this, and a lot of people genuinely love this film that are cinephiles, and I think that's why it's here, and I think it deserves to be in here. But I also think like, well, this kind of is proof that you could nominate more movies like this if you wanted to. You just don't. Right? So, wait. But that isn't to say though the end like the other blockbuster films were. What you're trying
to say is, why wasn't Spider-Man No Way Home?
No, I'm not saying that because I'm very happy that it wasn't included anywhere. I mean, it didn't get in. Well, we'll get to that, but it didn't get into Best Picture as some people were saying, and I feel like that's good because it didn't have any right being in this conversation. Even though a lot of people were like gas at that, but no, it had no business being here. But yeah, 10 nominations for Dune. Good for them. Belfast and West Side Story each got 7 nominations. King Richard got 6. Don't Look Up, Drive My Car, and Nightmare Alley all got 4 nominations. Being the Ricardos, Coda, Encanto, Flea, Licorice Pizza, The Lost Daughter, and No Time to Die, and The Tragedy of Macbeth all got 3 nominations. Real quick, I forgot that you and I watched The Tragedy of Macbeth. What did you think of that movie? I thought Denzel gave a great performance, and I think it's understandable for why he's nominated for Best Actor. As far as like its other nominations, it got today were cinematography and production design, and those are well deserved. I thought the film, quite frankly, was not for me because I can't take Shakespeare, and if you don't like Shakespeare, stay the hell away from this. I think it's a great film it's wonderfully made from a crafts perspective and acting perspective, but I can't get past the Shakespeare dialogue. I just couldn't get into it.
It's a beautiful film, gorgeous, yeah, unbelievably well made. But you're right. If you're not into Shakespeare, don't
bother.
Yeah, sorry. I enjoyed it for sure. I did enjoy it, and even if it felt like a foreign language, Shakespeare tales are simple enough that you can basically make out what's going on for the most part.
Yeah. My issue is you have to use context clues to figure it out because the dialogue will just leave you stranded like if you were on an island.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember this in English class too. Look at the way I speak. Of course I don't know fucking Shakespeare. But we would literally like break down lines, and I remember going like, "Well, okay, well, let's take 20 minutes to figure out what these 2 lines mean." Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, look at this word. It's a play on words of this, and then you go back to the first word in the sentence, and he's clearly, put together. It's trying to imply, and it's just like, fuck, dude, just like especially when they're like angry and they're like. Reading it is the best medium.
I agree.
Because you can take your time and just be like, okay, like, what is this? What's the emotion? What's going on here? But like, just watching it happen, like they'll be whispering their lines and then scream and talk very fast, and it's like, well, fuck, I'm lost.
Very.
Yeah. Very well made film, though.
I will agree with that. Absolutely, but it's just. There's just a barrier that I can't get past. So ultimately, what are my thoughts on this? Well, let me get to what my 2 favorite categories, and what I say by favorite, I think like they got all of the people, all the movies that were in these 2 categories were perfect. That isn't to say that there were some that I would have added in here, but for what they chose, it was like, wow. Now this is a category, and the categories were cinematography and production design, and the same 5 movies got into both of those. So this is where, again, so cinematography and production design. That's, for those that are not aware of, cinematography is how the movie looks, just like how it looks, how it's like, how it was shot. And then also, I guess, the colorization of it, and, all those choices go into the visualization of like what it looks like, cinematography. And then production design is the space it was used in the context of the film, like the sets and everything. So just to break that down.
Yeah.
So the nominees were Nightmare Alley, West Side Story, Dune, Power of the Dog, and The Tragedy of Macbeth. And I feel from like a cinematography and production design standpoint, they were all definitely deserving of being there.
Yeah.
There are others that I would add in, like The Green Knight, which was completely ignored all around.
Insane.
The Green Knight should have gotten in both of these and visual effects, quite frankly.
Yes.
But yeah, that movie was nowhere to be seen. Yeah. Last Duel got nothing. Jodie Comer should have been on that list. It wasn't. Ben Affleck even, he wasn't on there. Nicolas Cage did not get in for Best Actor, which we'll get to him in a bit. No, and again, Nightmare Alley should have had a much larger presence. I felt honestly that both Bradley Cooper and Cate Blanchett should have been considered. I would have liked to have seen Zegler or Mike Feist from West Side Story in here. Both of them were not here. Maybe one of the most egregious snubs is the song Edgar's Prayer from Barb and Star not getting into original song. Not even considered.
I know. Disgusting.
Yeah. And then this category particularly is kind of the most upsetting, because it's like this is just a category that has just all fallen victim to the worst tendencies of the Academy. And it happens to be the one category that actually welcomes the presence of big scale, big budgeted films that people actually see. And that is the Best Visual Effects category. Because the nominees for this were Dune, which will win, and No Time to Die, both of which I think have every right of being here.
Yes.
But then you also have Free Guy.
No.
What?
It was popular. That's why.
Right, and that's the reason for why all of these were included here. But yeah, Free Guy, Spider-Man No Way Home, which, as I just sent a tweet out to you before we went on the air, right? About, and then someone said this: I love No Way Home, but I really don't think it deserves an Oscar for Best Visual Effects when they are still making edits to the CGI as it's in theaters.
That is fair. That's a good point.
And then there's also Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings,
which also sucked.
That's pathetic.
The ones that should have been in there were the Suicide Squad. It had fantastic visuals. Mm-hmm. Special effects. Specific. It's not visuals, special effects.
Right.
Had fantastic special effects.
And Nawe, King Shark, and then also Starro.
Mm-hmm.
That looked incredible.
Really, really good CG. Really, really good. Again, this is where, well, maybe you would say makeup, but I would think maybe the Green Knight as well.
No, for sure, the Green Knight. I would definitely have put the Green Knight for visual effects, because it's visually stunning. And again, people seem to be confused about this. And I think also this branch of the Academy also confuses best visual effects for most visual effects. And when people think visual effects, they think CGI. Visual effects do not just mean CGI.
Yeah.
They mean like like Shape of Water, honestly, should have gotten a Best Visual Effects nomination a couple years back because of how it used to make the film look visually stunning. So The Green Knight did have VFX, but it was light, or with VFX because it had a smaller budget than a lot of these other films. And so you don't, because you're an overly CGI heavy movie, does not mean you automatically that's the grading curve for how we like, you know, include you or don't include you. So yeah, Green Knight should have definitely been included in this. Like I had a list of movies like The Green Knight should have been here. The Suicide Squad should have been here.
Mm-hmm.
The Matrix Resurrections, honestly, over Spider-Man and over Shang-Chi.
They were better, I think.
Yeah. Eternals, clearly, over
Also
a lot
better,
of these.
yeah.
Because, and look at this, like, look at those scenes with Arishem, especially. Just or even the Tiamat, the Celestial that's coming out of the earth. Like, insane. How that's just like, really? And then also Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah.
That whole third act. Like, how they were able to make the whole third act look so amazing as it was. It's so many movies this year that had great VFX. And what we get as far as the Free Guy? Shang-Chi?
Yeah. Pretty fucking lame.
This is on the level of, like, Black Panther.
Not that bad.
Wait, did Black Panther win that year?
No, I think they got
No, it was somebody else. It wasn't Black Panther, but it was nominated.
yeah, but I think they got costume. That's all I remember.
Yeah, and they got score too,
Mm-hmm.
and other stuff. This is just so depressing to me because like there were better films, quality, but also as far as the VFX are concerned, that honestly it should have been here and everything. By the way, can I just say this to make a point because we talked a little bit about this last week about the Eternals VFX artist, but I feel like look, people especially have a hard time with the narrative that all Marvel movies feel the same and look the same, and a lot of people don't believe that. And honestly, for myself, I didn't buy into that until a few years ago. But I've now have a completely flipped the other direction. And I feel like that point has now been definitively proven without a doubt because the VFX supervisor for Eternals, who has done several and many of the movies for the MCU, basically just admitted, like right now, look at this quote about Eternals. It was a new approach to filmmaking from my experience with the number of MCU films that I've done, which is location-based. This is the new stuff, which is location-based and using natural light, shooting at the end of the day with wide-angle lenses, long takes, particular rigs. So just a whole lot of new stuff, a whole lot of the stuff that we, the tools and tricks that we've assembled over the years to do our work, to make our work sort of fit in. We had to throw all that stuff out and just come up with a whole new visual language to match what Chloe was bringing. Basically saying, yeah, we basically do the exact same, as he says, tools and tricks with every single film. Except this one time where the director actually asked us to do something new and different. And it's hilarious at that one time. And it's... Two Marvel movies, I think for the first time, were nominated for Best Visual Effects. Well, not for the first time, but two Marvel movies got in for visual effects, and it wasn't this one. Yeah. Also, animated feature. Encanto did very well, and it's definitely winning that because everyone's watching that movie. Everyone is just a sensation. But it also wasn't the only one, and I wanted to ask you this because you weren't on that show, that particular episode. What was your reaction to Luca? Nielsen found that it was the most streamed film of 2021.
Good for the Italians.
Okay. All right. So yeah, Luca was the most streamed movie of the year, and Spider-Man: No Way Home clearly was the highest grossing film of the year with $1.8 billion. It's fucking crazy. So there's that. Anything else?
Mitchell's versus the Machines. We didn't even include them.
You know what? I'm happy they didn't get snubbed.
Yeah,
And in all honesty, that should win.
but it's not going
It's not going to.
to. Oh, as long as Encanto beats Luca.
And Mitchell's.
Well, I didn't mention that part.
It would be interesting if Flea won.
Wouldn't it? It's never gonna happen, but that would be. Well,
It is going
maybe.
to. It could win one of two other categories because it's also nominated for international film. But you know what? It's not going to win international film because Drive My Car is
That's
going to
win
that one.
international. It could. I
And
could
then-
win documentary.
It could very well win documentary, but you know what happened was this was one of the few years where they didn't intentionally snub the front runner for documentary. And from what I'm aware of, that was Summer of Soul. So it could be down between Summer of Soul and Flea. So, but the fact that Flea got in 3 different categories speaks to a certain kind of strength.
Yeah.
So it could be down to Flea and Encanto. Who knows?
Imagine how mad people would be.
If Encanto loses,
Yeah.
it's happened before, but it's always been funny. So, I mean, I think it's pretty ridiculous how We Don't Talk About Bruno was just not in this because Disney didn't submit the song.
They did. They did not expect it to blow up.
And blow up it did,
Yeah.
even in their faces.
Remember when you tried saying it wasn't a good song?
When you tried saying it, yeah, I remember
When
that.
you did, and I defended it right here.
You weren't defending shit.
Yes,
the only person
I
that defended
was.
anything was Alexis Moreno.
I was. We were in this exact same position. You were calling the music mid, and I was saying like, fucking.
I hate that expression mid.
Right?
Fuck those
It's so
people.
funny.
I hate that. I hate.
Don't
that
worry.
saying,
Anytime I
Alex.
use it, it's because it's ironically, and if you don't, and you won't be able to tell if I'm lying or not.
I said, as I do with all musicals, if I come out initially like underwhelmed with the music, I said this to you that same night, just give it a couple of weeks and I'll change my tune, because that always happens. And there are also musicals where I feel like I love the music much more than I do the actual film, like In the Heights and Mary Poppins Returns. I'm a sucker for music, and like those are examples of like movies where like have issues and I like, but I love the music much more than I like the movie. With Encanto, that's not in this category, and I feel like it's been happening. Encanto, I've grown so much more. Like when I walked out of that film, I was very much just kind of like, that was good,
You're like,
but I don't
it's
really
mid.
care. Yeah, well, I don't care much of anything. But I have now seen it like I think 2 or 3 more times since, and I've listened to the music and everything, and it is phenomenal. One of the best animated movies that Disney has made. And I was wrong. At least I feel like I've changed my mind completely on it, the same way that I've done with Eternals. So.
It's
You know what's interesting about both those movies is both of those films, the connection that they have is Alexis was the first one that was like overly enthusiastic and passionate about both of them, and she dragged me to her side. And they both both of their titles start with the letter E, and they both came out in November.
yes.
What happened that month?
Yes,
and they both have the Disney connection.
And I defended them as well. Don't try and leave me out of that equation.
You know what? You're right. You defended them as well initially, but to a far lesser extent than Alexis Moreno. Alexis was gung-ho about both of those films out of the gate.
For sure. But I feel it was my je ne sais quoi that helped really push the films in your direction.
So you're saying I don't like the implications that it would. Okay, anyway. But you know what? Another connection is I have been moved to kind of loving those films even more than I did because of both you and Moreno. But another connection is Kyle does not care for either of them.
That's true.
That's weird.
True.
All right. So, Peter, let's go ahead and get to the review for Tick, Tick, Boom. Peter, what is the letterbox description here?
Tick, Tick, Boom. Directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda. How much time do we have to do something great? On the cusp of his 30th birthday, a promising young theater composer navigates love, friendship, and the pressure to create something great before time runs out.
Oh, God.
Starring Andrew Garfield, Alexandra Shipp, Robin De Jesus, Vanessa Hudgens, Joshua Henry, Jonathan Mark, MJ Rodriguez, and, a bunch of other people. Produced by Brian Grazer.
Is that burp exactly how you felt about this movie?
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's get a couple of things straightened out as I teased in last week's show. Every time Peter and I review a musical, there's always a divergence for seemingly something that I always try to anticipate but can never actually get there. So I'm going to try my best again to predict what that would be and probably be wrong here. But it has been, I guess if you want to count Encanto, that is a musical film, but it's primarily in the animation field. So Encanto is also a rare thing because you and I hardly agree. Not hardly, but it is rare when we completely agree on a musical and then also on animated film. We have very polarizing thoughts on any number of those kind of movies. And so this is the kind of genre where we barely ever see eye to eye on. I mean, as far as passion is concerned, I think with West Side Story, we both agreed it was great, but clearly I loved it, and clearly the subject matter kept you at an arm's length, if not more so. Check out our review of West Side Story from a month back. But here's what we're going to do. I'm going to say all the stuff that I liked about this first, and I'm going to ask you to be patient because usually I'm going to forget what other things I wanted to say if you go off on a tangent, which you will. So let me see if I can remember. So I saw this late November. It's been months now. Shit. God. This is not a perfect film. I wouldn't say it is outstanding to the point where it's in my top 10 of the year, but I think it's definitely solidly in my top 20 so far. I definitely responded to this film for a reason that I think you didn't respond to it. We're very different people in terms of how we view time, in terms of how we view age, especially if we consider it to be an existential crisis of sorts. And so I'm going to assume that's a dividing line between you and I. And that's very much the central theme of this movie, basically, or one of the central themes of this film. And a lot of the songs and the subject matter are definitely devoted to fleshing that out and the existential crisis that Jonathan Larson, a real individual that Andrew Garfield is portraying, was going through in this period of his life, especially with him, about to turn 30 years old. And our age group is going to get ready to pass that milestone in a couple of years from now. And so I can definitely speak from our age group. Kyle and I very much responded to the material in this film because that's an age that is slowly, or I should say quickly, creeping up on us. You're not that kind of person. I mean, you're the same age as we are, but you don't you don't relate to this kind of stuff. So I had already assumed going in that this wasn't going to work with you, and it may even annoy you, but we'll see how you feel about that. But with me, I ate it up, basically. This is a really good debut for Lin-Manuel, as far as how it was directed. I know nothing of Jonathan Larson before this. I guess I heard of a musical called Rent, but I've not seen it or heard any of the music out of it. But this is an adaptation of the one the Broadway musical he wrote before Rent, and this is Tick Tick Boom. And I really loved Andrew Garfield in this movie. I think and I've been saying this for a long time, for the last few weeks, he's a tremendous actor. The only performance I did not care of his, and that had more to do with the characterization and the writing, was his Spider-Man movies. Uh-huh. But that's the only time I've not enjoyed a performance of his. I love how no one brought up how in No Way Home, that was basically a different iteration of the character than he was in those movies. Besides us.
It really was. It really was. Yeah.
That was really weird. But I loved him in, I was shattered by his performance in Silence. And he was beautiful in Hacksaw Ridge and amazing in The Social Network. He even did, in the late 2000s, I think, he also was a guest appearance on Doctor Who in season 3, which would have been in 2008, I think.
Really?
Yeah. He is Brit, so of course he would be.
He's
on
allowed
Doctor Who.
to be.
He's an institution. I mean, Doctor Who is an institution, so he would be on there. No, I love Andrew Garfield, and I also just love the love that he's getting, and I would be so unbelievably thrilled if by some unforeseen miracle he ends up getting an Oscar for this performance, because I think he gave it his all. Like, you just feel the passion, the acting, and oh God, I didn't even know he could sing. And he's terrific too. And that counts in my book when you actually sing. Unlike Rami Malek that just lip synced to Freddie Mercury. Honestly, half that Oscar really was because Freddie Mercury was a great singer that Rami Malek won. Robin De Jesus, who plays his friend here, is also pretty great. At one point, he was being looked at for a nomination for Best Supporting Actor, but that had since died down. And also, surprisingly, who I have not seen in ages, Vanessa Hudgens was in this. And I had forgotten what an amazing singer she is. She's got a great vocal ability on her. Yeah, I do. I feel like and I'm not, by the way, this crowd, but I feel like if you're not like a theater kid, this may be a bit trying. I'm not a theater kid because I never was in theater. And there are some tendencies that are exhibited here by the character of Johnny Larson that are very much unappealing, unattractive, and kind of a shithead, which he is to a large extent of it. And I feel like I wouldn't say it falls into the trap that a lot of films like this does, like with King Richard, where it just absolves the lead character of all of their misgivings because of this here or that there. I think there is some sort of like atonement and then consequence through it, but we'll get to all of that. I really like this movie. And what I love about it, and I guess, yeah, I would put this in the same category as In the Heights and and Mary Poppins Returns, where I love the music more than I love the movie itself. And the music, of course, is not Lin-Manuel's. This is Jonathan Larson's actual work.
Yes.
From many, many years ago. And so it's a style of even though it's early, but I guess late 90s, early 2000s pop rock, which of course
God,
I'm
yes.
so overly like nostalgic for that sound lately. So it like, I ate that up entirely. So that's my review. And now, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, here is Peter Martinez.
All right, here's the deal.
Real quick, can I ask you this question?
Go ahead.
On the music, because I feel like as rarely as we agree on musical films themselves, I think we agree even less as far as like what we feel makes a good song or not. Because I love the music in The Heights, and you did not like it at all. Did you like the music? Not the movie, but the music in Frozen 2.
In Frozen 2?
Yeah, the music, the songs. Did you like the songs? Do you know any? Did any of them stand out to you?
I don't even think I remember the music.
Okay, then that answers that question. So there it is. We agree far less on taste in music, even less than we do on film. So just wanted to make it crystal clear to people who are listening. Yeah.
So
also, West Side Story is amazing. Go watch that movie.
So what I was about to say before I was so rudely interrupted was Lin has a very particular character that
I forget
that
also,
he is obsessed with.
That should have been the other asterisk too. Is you have a rather interesting and complicated relationship with anything involving Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yeah. Well, he has a very specific character that he is obsessed with, and I dare say it's like the the Mary Stew of of characters.
Oh God.
Yes, I'm throwing it out there only because I think it's funny. But it's like this go-getter that has a dream of being the best there is. And
I already see it. Yeah. So Alexander Hamilton, Anthony Ramos's character Usnavi in the Heights, and then Jonathan Larson's character here, or Jonathan Larson in Tick Tick Boom. Off the bat, I already see it.
It's the same fucking character.
Yeah,
he has a specific obsession with this type of character, one which I don't know. It just doesn't. It's whatever to me.
Sure.
This type, like he's so fascinated by him, that type of character, but he also doesn't do anything interesting with that type of character. The last film,
it's the same thing every time.
It's the last film that I saw do anything interesting with that type of character was fucking Whiplash.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That actually explored like that kind of, the psychology and that kind of stuff. And even though that's a little bit darker, I think you can still have more positive lighted films that actually do anything interesting. I don't think he does anything interesting. It's just celebrating like, wow, this character's the best,
because he has a dream and
because he has a dream.
Yeah.
And he's trying to achieve that dream. And that's it. Like, that's literally it.
And that's who he is.
Yeah. But it's annoying. And I know why people find him annoying. Because it's, I mean, I guess you can say you can't argue with the results as far as achieving said dream. Which, again, I really enjoy a lot of his work.
The only thing he has left to win is an Oscar, to be a PGOT. He got the Pulitzer, the Grammy, the Tony, and an Emmy.
But he can never be an EGOT?
If he wins the Oscar, he will be both an EGOT and an even more exclusive club is PGOT.
Holy
PGOT
shit.
is for the Pulitzer.
Wow. Which
he's already won, yeah. Yeah, you can't argue with the results.
Yeah, you cannot argue with the results.
But again, I don't want to do a King Richard mentality here, because people would also say the exact same shit about the abuse that the Will Smith character inflicted on his daughters. Even though people will want to say like, well, you can't argue with the results, can you? No, you can't. But that also means we shouldn't have a discussion about his methods. So
yeah, and here it's not a discussion on the methods. It's just it's. His characters can be fucking annoying. The downsides are much, much, much less, but it's something. And
I'm gonna say though, I and maybe this is where you and I differ. I was far less. Well, at the same time, they all do have the same tendencies to be annoying in the exact same way too. But maybe I will say, because I do think Garfield did a great job. I wouldn't think he was in the same field as annoying as definitely was Navi, or even more so Alexander Hamilton. I can't get over, damn, that song about the person he slept with, and like,
yeah. That's the thing. All his characters have to be like perfect, right? They're just the greatest person ever known. They're just trying to achieve their dream, like, and you could tell like in his mind, it's like, oh my God, that's me. I'm just such a great guy. I'm just trying to achieve my dream. And it's, I don't know. It's just a little, I don't care too much about those stories, especially when there's nothing to it, right? There's no extra layer.
It's just that. What you see is what you get.
Yeah, like that's it. And I know it's based off a real guy. He's most notable for the musical Rent. Have you ever seen Rent?
No.
I have. It sucks.
Nettie said the exact same thing.
I fucking hate it. It's fucking terrible. And it's filled with shitty people.
Oh, okay.
And I hate it. And you know what else? I hate the music. I hate the music.
I can't speak to it, but okay.
And it's funny, when I started watching this film, I didn't know that it was him. But the second the first song came on, I was like, that sounds so familiar.
Oh, no.
And by the time the second song came on, I'm like, this sounds like it's like Rent. Like it's, and I'm like, oh my God, that's the fucking guy. It's the same songs. So, suffice to say,
you hate this, and you hate the music. Oh my God, I love the music. And Tick Tick Boom, I loved all the songs.
To be fair, there's a couple of good songs in Rent. It has that one song. It's like 5,000 minutes. How do you measure
Seasons of Love? I think.
Yeah.
Seasons of Life. Yeah.
But the rest of it is just me no likey. And
not your cup of tea.
The same here.
Yeah.
Me no likey. And you have the great performance by
Andrew
Garfield, right? But really the majority of the story is, I'm just this great guy and I'm just trying to achieve my dream, and oh my gosh, I'm so close yet so far, and like that's it. That's all it is. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's the music.
Yes.
Which I'm not crazy about. So, I mean, it's actually,
and that's look, to be fair, there's nothing worse. You're watching a musical and none of the songs are doing it for you.
Yeah, that's sure, that is the worst. But the directing isn't bad. I actually thought, especially for his first directorial debut, pretty good, right? As far as directing goes, and of course the performance is pretty darn good as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's like all that stuff is good, but the movie itself just doesn't appeal to me, right? And then remember how I told you how like I had an epiphany about how music theater nerds are like the ultimate fucking nerds?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. This movie.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure how much I don't know, value that epiphany has, because I think it's pretty evident. That's at least how what I've found over the years to be the case. I didn't film nerds, I didn't band nerds, but it's the theater nerds that are pretty, well, because they're all about that life. And the cliches seem to be pretty accurate from what I've seen.
It's fucking more than accurate.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's a bad film.
Mm-hmm.
I would never say it's a bad film. It's very much a not for me film, though.
Right.
A lot of it I found annoying. Yeah, the movie to me is mostly just annoying.
So that's perfectly fair. There have been films that way that I've seen that were, if it's not for you, if it doesn't connect, then that's all the explanation you need. Am I to understand the only musical you liked in 2021 was Encanto?
I enjoyed West Side Story.
Okay.
I like the music. I like beautiful film. Like I said, it's just once you get towards the third act, characters make
it loses
decisions
you completely.
that piss me off, right? Because again, like we said, fucking Shakespeare.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, there's so much of West Side Story. I love like I said, I told you, the Coming to America sequence, so good, right? Like, amazing. Well, it's not Coming to America, but it's
That's a movie.
Yeah.
The America sequence.
America. It's just America. Yeah, no. Really good.
Yeah, but you're right. There really isn't much more to say.
No.
No.
But it's one of those things, like, yeah, if you like it, I get it.
Yeah.
I do. It's just, I don't know. It's not built for me. And that is A-okay.
That's perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. Do you want to stop it here and save Pig, or do you want to...
Yeah, let's just stop it.
Yeah. All right, then. Well, you know what, guys? We're going to go ahead and save Pig for next week because, well, you know, we got things to do, and we have to get ready for our coverage of the next episode of Boba Fett. So, of course, that's going to...
Live reaction.
Jesus Christ. That's going to kill us. Anyway, thank you all for listening to this episode. We'll have much more content next time with all the movies and more so under our spotlight. Also, check out the new podcast with Alexis Moreno, Kyle Lira, Peter Martinez, and David Francisco. It's a book club. Harry Potter. They're reading, and they're talking about it.
Mr. Alexis was invited, and he gave it a flat no.
I was so graciously invited to participate in the program, but I ever so politely declined because, quite frankly, I have no interest in Harry Potter and even less interest in reading. What I am interested in is watching movies and TV, but I've never cared about Harry Potter, quite frankly. I enjoy the movies, and that's it. I loved the Wizarding World experience in Universal, and the Dark Ride was one of the best theme park attractions ever created. So from that perspective, I enjoyed it. But Harry Potter is just, it's a passion all of them have a lot of commonality with, and a lot of history, especially with. I do not share that history. So, nor do I care to partake in it. So I go ahead. I've gone ahead and just removed myself from that discussion. But yeah, go ahead and check that out when you can. And at some point, Fantasy Fair is going to have their Encanto review. We're just waiting and waiting for it. It's hilarious because I just picked up the Blu-ray today, and Fantasy Fair has still not had a review on Encanto. It hit theaters. It's had its debut on Disney Plus. It's on Blu-ray now.
Defiant. I already know one day he's gonna try and bring it back, and in that day I'm gonna say no. You cannot bring it back. Alexis Moreno will say no. We cannot bring it back until we have the review.
He's already shown in the past that pressure works.
Yes.
Like he folded on Eternals.
He did. Folded like a wet blanket.
So yeah, check all of that out and all of our other sounds here on Apple Music, Spotify, wherever you listen to us. We'll see you next time, everybody. Bye-bye.